Women's health is extremely important to me, and I think modern fertility is one of the most exciting, accessible new advancements to come out in recent years to help us really understand our bodies more. Whether you're ready to pop out a mini-me like yesterday, or the thought of being someone's parent after the night you had last night seems light years away, knowledge is power. Understanding how our bodies work to better be able to prepare for the future and take better care of ourselves right now is game-changing. Modern fertility doesn't just offer fertility testing. It also offers birth control, prenatal vitamins, ovulation and pregnancy tests, and just launched a sperm kit. Because fertility isn't just a woman's job, okay? So click the link in the show notes for $10 off your modern fertility hormone test and join the thousands of women who refuse to let fertility be a mystery. Now, back to the show. Hi, first time fam. I am coming at you with a solo episode today, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you will see Mr. Tuck Sinclair making an appearance because he just needs to be everywhere that we are, so you may see him pop in and out. I wanted to do an episode on fertility stuff today. So today I am 20 weeks pregnant, which feels crazy to say. For any of you who've been following along, this journey has been anything but straightforward, and it has been almost 5 years in the making. And it feels crazy to think that I'm halfway through a pregnancy with our future daughter. Wild, but been able to connect with a lot of fellow hopeful parents, and I've gotten a lot of questions about what I've done differently between the last pregnancy and this one, and the answer is a lot. So I'm going to be sharing a lot of information today. The last thing I want is for anyone to be overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information that I'm going to be sharing. So try digest it as it feels good to you. You don't even need to listen to this whole episode in one fell swoop. If any of this feels like it's something you want to try, you certainly don't have to apply all of these things. I will just preface that I have diagnosed obsessive compulsive disorder. So when I have like an idea in my mind, I have to fully explore every possible thing that has to do with that idea. And fertility has been no exception, which on one hand, I think has been helpful. On another hand, has driven me like almost quite literally insane at different points in my journey. So I think figuring out what makes the most sense for you is paramount. How you can maintain your peace throughout this journey is paramount. Taking on what you feel you can take on and leaving what you feel like you can't take on. So I'm not going to make you wait for, a big intro. We're just going to get right into it. So let me look at my notes here because there's a lot. I've talked about this before in the podcast. I'm a big fan of functional medicine. If you're unfamiliar with functional medicine, basically your practitioner has gone through traditional medical school training, but then they have extensive supplemental and lifestyle training that they've done in addition to medical school as well. So you're really getting a well-rounded approach that is really curated to your exact health needs. And it's also focused more on getting to the root of what your health issue is versus masking it or just giving you something to treat the symptoms of it. So I really personally appreciate that approach. And that's been the kind of foundation of my health journey since I really started trying to work on reversing my Hashimoto's since my early 30s. I'm 39 now, so I've spent the better part of this decade going to functional practitioners. So I personally started working with Parsley Health, which this is not sponsored by them, but I wish it would be because I had the most incredible experience with them. I cannot speak highly enough on their attention to detail, going above and beyond, like really looking under the hood and trying to get to the bottom of what was keeping me from being able to have a more regularly functioning thyroid and sustain a healthy pregnancy. The first thing that I would suggest getting done is a CBC or complete blood panel to look at everything that's happening in your body. And also getting a full thyroid panel done, not just your TSH, but you want to get your free T3, T4 antibodies. Really look at how your body is processing thyroid hormone, how it's making it, if you have an overabundance, if you're not producing enough. That can affect so many things just with how you feel, but also with fertility. So that's a great place to start at the foundation of it. Based on the results of that, you may need supplementation to support your body during this period of your life where you're in your reproductive years. So for example, like anything, if you have low iron levels, if your vitamin D levels are low, if you have some thyroid issues and need some medication or support for that. So if those tests don't provide answers, and particularly in the case of if you've had previous miscarriages, seeing an autoimmune fertility specialist may be helpful. I saw a fantastic doctor in New York. If any of you listening to this are interested, DM me and I'll send you her information. And she tested me to see if I had any other additional autoimmune diseases that weren't diagnosed. Luckily, I didn't have any other autoimmune diseases. The frustrating side of that was I still didn't have any answers because my thyroid was being managed really well. There's some new studies that are coming out saying that even if you've had one miscarriage, that can increase your autoimmunity. So tackling this earlier than later, and being really proactive about it, I think would be the most productive approach, just personally, completely subjectively speaking. And again, like miscarriages can be a complete anomaly. It can be just bad luck. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have some kind of autoimmune disease. I think I'm always kind of looking at it through that lens because that's just been my personal experience. So take that with a grain of salt when you're listening to this. I'm not trying to scare you into thinking like every person who miscarries has an autoimmune disease. That is not true. Sometimes it just wasn't the right egg or the right sperm or the right combination. And, science is going to science, and that's just what it does. So looking into that though, if you've had recurrent miscarriage, can be really helpful. The next thing that I did with my provider at Parsley was a Dutch test. Again, I've spoken about this before on the podcast, but a Dutch test is basically a really detailed hormone test to see how your body is producing hormones and also processing those hormones. So this can give you some really great insight as to if you have any deficiencies or overproduction of hormones that could be affecting your fertility. Again, like luckily mine were really good, which is great news, but also really fucking frustrating when you're like, why can I not stay pregnant? So I started to do what's called cycle syncing anyway, because I figured it couldn't hurt. But if you get the results of your Dutch test back and you do have some hormone imbalances, cycle syncing may be something that you may find helpful. So basically what cycle syncing is, you can do this with your diet and with exercise, is that you eat certain foods at different points in your cycle. Like you're going to eat different foods for your luteal phase versus your ovulatory phase. And you're also going to do different exercises for the different stages of your cycle too. So like, for example, when you have your period, you are not going to be doing really high intensity workouts. You're going to be doing really gentle, like yoga flows, Pilates, things like that. And so I know that can feel kind of overwhelming to think like, oh my God, I need to completely overhaul my lifestyle. But the way I did it in a way that felt good to me was I just implemented like one ingredient into each meal. And I felt like that was really helpful for me, instead of thinking like my entire meal had to be made up of everything I'm supposed to be eating this week. And at the top of the week, you shop for your groceries and you make a list of like some of the things that you should be getting in that week. And if you find them at the grocery store, great. If not, you try again next week. It's not that deep. I will say though, I'm very lucky in that my period is very regular. I ovulate on a regular basis, but I still saw benefits with symptoms. So with my period, I used to get really tender breasts. I used to cramp. And leading up to getting pregnant, my period was relatively asymptomatic since I started doing cycle syncing and exercise syncing. I personally followed a chart made up by a nutritionist she's on Instagram at So Fresh and So Green. I'll tag her, and I'll put a bunch of links in the show notes for this. But I personally followed her dietary cycle syncing and found it to be really helpful. It was broken down in a very clear way. So that is something else that if you're having issues with period regularity or ovulation regularity, that might be something that could be really helpful for you too. Again, I wasn't necessarily having those issues, but I figured it couldn't help, and maybe it'll just make my body function that much more efficiently. Okay, the next huge part of the puzzle, which I think personally was kind of the smoking gun for me with my thyroid and with fertility, was SIBO. So that's SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. I started seeing some things about SIBO pop up online, and the more I read about it, the more I had this like sneaking suspicion that firstly, like the algorithm was listening to me and being like, bitch, you have SIBO. Like, we're just going to keep sending you information until you put those things together and realize you have it. And so I talked to my doctor at Parsley, and she ordered me an at-home test to do to see if I did have SIBO. So how you test for it is it's a breath test, and it measures, I believe, how much hydrogen you have in your intestinal tract, and you're going to blow into these little like capsules basically every like 20 to 30 minutes over the course of like 3 hours, and it registers how your body is producing hydrogen, and it shows if you have an overabundance of that. And if you do, that means there's some kind of bacteria that's like stifling your digestion, essentially. I'm sure I'm not getting this like perfectly right, but this is the general gist of what it is. So those results sure enough, came back positive. And so my personal protocol, and this is probably going to be catered to you specifically because I think there's different types of SIBO. And so figuring out like which type you have is probably going to determine what kind of protocol you should do. But my personal protocol was 2 weeks of antibiotics, so which kind of completely kill everything in your gut. And I will preface that with saying those are probably two of the hardest mental health weeks of my life, because gut-brain connection, if you're destroying everything, then you are not going to be right in the head, and I was not. But after those 2 weeks, it was like overall a 4-month protocol of then retoning my intestinal tract to get it like working regularly again. So because it had gotten slowed down by the SIBO, and that's how the bacterial overgrowth happens. Your body isn't pushing that food through fast enough through your intestinal tract, and that's where that bacteria comes in and causes all these inflammatory issues. So we worked on retoning my intestinal tract with various supplements, and then we rebuilt my gut flora, cycling through various pre and probiotics as well. And that, again, that whole process took about 4 months. And I will say, since I did that, my mental health has been like, I recognize myself again. I think like fertility can really, it's like, if you've never had anxiety before, it can very easily give you anxiety. And if you already have anxiety, I mean, forget about it. It can just shoot it through the roof. Like behind cancer, fertility is the most stressful event that can happen in someone's life. And that's not bullshit. That is like easy to find online. Like, Google it. So it just really helped with my anxiety. My blood tests for my thyroid started coming back a lot more consistently. My TSH, instead of kind of, blood draw it would be like a 3.2, and the next one it would be like a 4.5, and the next one it would be like a 1.2. It kind of consistently stayed around a 2, which is ideally where a lot of doctors will say they want you to be when you are trying to conceive, because your thyroid is naturally going to increase the deeper you get into pregnancy. So they want to just create like a cushion to play with your thyroid during pregnancy. So they like to keep it at least at around a 2 while you're trying to conceive and during your pregnancy. So once we figured out the SIBO component, another thing that I had been reading about, and that is a more popular concept in the functional world than it is with traditional doctors, because I've seen some more traditional doctors and they've kind of blown off this idea, but vitamin D levels. So I was having a really hard time getting my vitamin D levels above 30, and I believe for fertility, you want to have them at least around a 60 to 70. And I switched to a liquid dropper vitamin D3 with K2 so that I can control the dosage to up it if I needed to. And then if I hit where I wanted to be, I could like take a little bit less. So I was able to get my vitamin D levels up to, I think, like 60 and change via switching to a liquid vitamin D3 versus just taking like a set capsule. So then the next thing that I threw into my fertility regimen was myo-inositol. So I initially got a myo-inositol because I had read that it could be helpful with hormonal weight gain, and with each pregnancy I had gained weight and then like couldn't lose it. And so I was trying to just like regulate my weight, but then I came across information about the benefits with myo-inositol and egg quality, and so I was like, well, okay, I'll just like keep taking this. And I ended up being on it for about a year or so. But even being on something like that for 3 months, like a prenatal per se, a lot of doctors say 3 to 6 months is a great amount of time to be on something for egg quality before you start trying to get pregnant. So, and if you do start taking something like myo-inositol, you can actually stop taking it once you get pregnant because, again, the benefits are to help with egg quality. So if you have a good egg, you don't need to take it anymore. And we'll just say, like, if I want to try and have another baby, I'd probably get on this again, like after I deliver, to like just keep my egg quality up because, you know, I'm only getting older. All right, next thing, prenatal. So not all prenatals are made equal. You also don't need to be spending like $1 bajillion on a prenatal. I think the fertility industry can be highly predatory and make you think that you need to be spending all this money in order to get the results that you want. And that is simply not true. I will say there are some products that are more well-rounded than other products, as I've tried so freaking many of them. One that I was on for about a year that was good but was just very expensive is called Bird and Bee. Bee is just spelled B-E. And both Matt and I were on prenatal. So they have a male prenatal formula and a female prenatal formula. Now, there are studies coming out talking about how sperm is actually way more important than it had been given credit for. Like a lot of fertility studies had been done around egg quality and not as many were being done around sperm quality. And so recently they're saying that like sperm actually can equate for up to, I may get the stat wrong, but I think up to like somewhere between 60 to 80% of the success of a pregnancy. So if you have a male partner, he needs to be eating right. He needs to be supplementing. He needs to be not treating his body like crap, because it could potentially be setting you up to have to go through something like a miscarriage. And that is the last thing I want for anyone on this world, if it is preventable, which sometimes it is just not, because again, science, and it is just a really common thing to happen on the way to building a family. But men are responsible in this as well. So anyway, with the prenatal, you want to be getting a good amount of folic acid. There's a lot of talk around methylated folate and MTHFR. So from what a lot of doctors I've worked with have told me, a lot of women have MTHFR, which is like, from what I've read, a difficulty processing a folic acid. And so there's some thoughts that like methylated folate is easier for your body to process, but folic acid is still the gold standard. So you still want to be, you don't want to just be doing methylated folate. You want folic acid. And I supplemented with additional methylated folate. You kind of can't get enough. It's just like a super ingredient for making a baby. The other thing that the Bird and Bee had, which was a lot of different antioxidants, which are great for sperm and egg quality. This being said, again, like I just couldn't afford to keep doing it because it was very expensive. And at the suggestion of a maternal fetal medicine doctor, I just started taking one a day prenatal with added choline. Choline can also be great for trying to prevent miscarriage and I think like brain development as well, a really great supportive ingredient. So this one a day prenatal, it also has fish oil, it has great folic acid, and that was half the price of the Bird and Bee. So, and I was on the Bird and Bee for a year and didn't get pregnant, and then I was on the one a day, and here we are. So again, just proving that you don't need to spend all of your money on all these like, kind of boutique wellness items. You just do what feels good for you, because also too, if you're stressed out financially, that's going to cause stress in your body, and you just need to be doing whatever feels sustainable for you financially, physically, mentally, emotionally. So the next component, which if I'm being honest, I have mixed feelings about, is acupuncture. So I did acupuncture for a year and miscarried. I have a bunch of friends who swear by acupuncture and how it positively impacted their fertility. So I think it's really kind of one of those things that like you need to discover for yourself and see if you feel benefits from it. I have gotten much more into like Eastern medicine and like herbs and different practices. I think acupuncture is kind of a gateway for me to learn about those things. And I stopped doing acupuncture for most of this year, but I did start seeing a fertility acupuncture specialist here in LA when I found out I was pregnant because of the herbal support. So she got me on a specific herb that is for women who have had miscarriages before. So I was on that for most of my first trimester, and I was seeing her weekly during that time as well, just for like blood flow purposes. And now I see her maybe every like 2 to 3 weeks, mostly because I just really like her. It's not because I actually feel like amazing, but also I have noticed I've been getting some hip pain, and it's been helping with the hip pain. And then I'll probably do some more herbs to support my body like once I deliver as well. So that is really something that you have to try for yourself. It can be very cost prohibitive if you're doing private acupuncture sessions. I feel like typically they can range anywhere from like $1 to $150 to $200 a session, which is, I'm not trying to bash any practitioners, but that's insane to me for like all you're doing is sticking needles in someone and then leaving the room. Granted, you need to know where to put those needles and it's a hygienic thing, but I'm just like, that's a great way to make money. But there are some great community acupuncture options that you can look into. The ones that I've done typically were suggested donation up to around like $55 per session. And you're just not in a private room. You're in like a room like full of people, but it's like quiet. They have peaceful music playing. Like everyone is there for, getting this like same procedure done basically. So it's like a fraction of the cost. So looking to see if there's any community acupuncture spots in your area, and that might be like in easy, cost-effective way for you to kind of get introduced to it, to see if you like it. And then if you feel like you need somebody who really specializes in fertility acupuncture, then move on up to them. Also too, I'm not sure if TIA is a practice that is throughout the country, but TIA is like a women's health provider that has a lot of different locations around LA, and they provide acupuncture that's covered by insurance. So then you just have to pay your copay. So that might be like one of the most cost-effective ways to do it if you're in the LA area or wherever. See if there's a TIA by you. It's just TIA. One of the reasons you're probably listening to the show is because you like to learn new things, and Skillshare is the place to do just that. One of the founding principles of the internet was to give people access to information they wouldn't normally have access to, and Skillshare has taken this to the next level by creating 29,000 courses with new ones added to their roster every week, ranging from creative writing to marketing to website development and really whatever you're looking to get better at. You'll get to try Skillshare free for 1 month before choosing between 2 very affordable options at $29 a month or $165 for the year, which comes out to about $13.75 monthly, which is an insane deal for the amount of knowledge you'll be getting access to. Get 30% off your annual membership at the link in the show notes and start learning, well, everything. Now back to the show. Next thing that I started doing is abdominal massage. So I had done this because I heard it was helpful for SIBO, like post-SIBO protocol, to keep your digestive system functioning at a nice speed, basically. But it can also be helpful for fertility because it draws blood flow to your reproductive organs. So I would just do it as part of my daily routine, like get out of the shower, get some body oil. And I had watched some YouTube videos on like various different abdominal massages, and I would just do that as like a way of moisturizing my body every day when I got out of the shower and just making it productive. The next kind of physical thing I started doing was QiGong and rebounding. So QiGong is a system of coordinated body posture and movement, breathing, and meditation that's thought to be useful for the purposes of health, spirituality, and martial arts training. That's what the internet's official definition is. So it's kind of like tapping on different parts of your body, and that helps bring blood flow to different areas and like distribute energy throughout your body. So if you're somebody who enjoys kind of bringing together spiritual or energetic practices and physical practices, that might be something that you want to try. That's spelled QiGang, or you may see it like QiGong. And yeah, you can just YouTube some videos on QiGong. There's some great like QiGong people on social media as well. Rebounding is you're just on a trampoline jumping up and down. And that is really helpful with lymphatic drainage, which helps with your detox pathways, which helps with inflammation. And so, again, like a lot of these things I would just work into my life so that I didn't have to like take specific time to do them. So with the QiGong and the rebounding, when I let my dog out to go to the bathroom every night, I would like pop down this like little trampoline that I have and just bounce on it until he was done doing his thing. And that usually took like maybe 1 to 3 minutes. And then that was it. You really get amazing benefits if you do it for like the length of a song. I actually did a video on this on my social media because there's potentially a correlation between lymphatic drainage, like surrounding your voice, and benefits with that. But so you can go to my Instagram or TikTok and find that if you want to watch that. But yeah, it is scientifically shown to help with lymphatic drainage. So that's really great. Or if I didn't feel like doing that, I would go outside with my dog and like do QiGong stuff in the backyard until he was done doing his thing, and then I'd come inside. So finding creative ways to work this stuff into your daily life so it doesn't feel super overwhelming, where you're just like, oh my God, I have to take like this amount of time to go do this, and now I have to do that and do that. It's like, no, just make it make sense, make it easy, and be consistent with it. So I was doing all these things like daily. The next thing is or just like sweating in general, again, with detoxing and opening up your detox pathways, reducing inflammation. A lot of information around autoimmunity, specifically in women, is that doing high impact exercise can cause more inflammation. And I used to really love doing HIIT workouts. And running. And so I found it difficult to work up a sweat not doing those sort of things. So I needed to find a way to sweat again that wasn't high impact, basically, and going to cause inflammation. So last Christmas, I had asked my family for a sauna sleeping bag because we don't own the place we're currently living in, so I can't just like build a sauna, and also they're really expensive. But basically what you do is you set the time and you set the heat degree you want to be on, and you just like get up in there like a little snail for the amount of time. And then when I tell you, you will get out and you will be drenched in sweat. They work for sure. So I've been doing that like somewhat consistently over the course of the last year. And then I would say like close to when I got pregnant, I had been using actual saunas somewhat regularly. And then if you can combine that with red light therapy, chef's kiss for reducing inflammation. So if you have access to like, there are some gyms that are pretty affordable that have saunas. Like I had looked into LA Fitness, like they have saunas in some of their gyms. And yeah, just like look for a gym that has a sauna if you don't want to like spend money on any of these other things. And then it's just like there when you're done exercising. The next thing that I was doing on a regular basis were castor oil packs. This was at the suggestion of my functional doctor. So I mostly was doing them on my liver because there's a correlation between your liver health and your thyroid health. And if you're not processing things through your liver well, then your thyroid may not be functioning optimally. My bilirubin levels have always been on like the higher side. So I was doing this maybe a couple times a week. What I would also do too is take like hot baths, and I would put castor oil on my liver. I'd put it on my thyroid, and I'd put it on my reproductive organs. And castor oil just helps increase blood flow to these areas. So you do not want to use castor oil if you're pregnant though. So when you get pregnant, we're manifesting that shit for everyone listening who wants it. Stop using castor oil. It's a great means to an end, but you don't want to use it because it can increase blood flow. That may stimulate something like miscarriage because it's like maybe bringing too much to that area and you don't need it in that area. When you do this as well, you want to make sure that you're using some sort of like organic material. So I found like an organic bamboo pack on Amazon for like $20 and would just like put it on that pack. And then if you're washing it, like don't use like a fragranced like soap or anything, just like unscented, soap, or replace it regularly because you don't want whatever is on that material to also be like seeping through your skin when you're doing the castor oil pack too. The last thing that I can remember because there's been so much, you guys. I probably should have put this earlier because it was part of a diagnosis that also led me to like start doing all of these things. I got diagnosed with long COVID. I want to say like a year and a half ago. So I got COVID in July of 22. And then I want to say maybe 6 to 8 weeks after that, I started having this really crazy thing happen where I would shake internally as I was falling asleep and as I was waking up. And I saw a neurologist, I saw functional medicine doctors, I saw autoimmune specialists because I thought maybe I have MS or Parkinson's or something like crazy. All of those tests came back negative. And then I was finally able to get into the long COVID clinic at Yale. And the doctor there was like, this is actually one of the most common symptoms we're starting to see from long COVID. It's a nervous system issue, and it causes this like feeling of internal vibration, and it can be at different levels for different people. So some people, you can actually see it happening, and other people like me, you can't see it, you can't feel it. Only I can feel it like inside. So that was a relief in a way. The thing that's been hard to kind of accept about it is that I still have it. This is like 2.5 years later. And luckily, a lot of like long COVID symptoms can go away after 6 months, but this has really stuck around. The good thing is I don't really experience it anymore because I got on a medication called low-dose naltrexone. So naltrexone is typically a drug that's given to people who overdose on fentanyl. And when it's given in very, very low doses, it can be helpful for things like addiction. So I think initially a lot of studies had been done on people struggling with alcoholism and seeing the benefits on it kind of like helps with that impulse control, but it helps to calm your nervous system and kind of regulate your immune function as well. So for me, the immune function part of it was really helpful. So that helped with inflammation, which helped with the sensation of shaking, also helped with inflammation from autoimmunity, which also helps with fertility. So some more functional doctors are starting to prescribe it for fertility benefits and for autoimmune benefits as well. So typically you start at a very low dose and then you work up to around 4 milligrams. When I got up to around 1.5 to 2 milligrams, there's virtually zero side effects, but this is the main one. It's nightmares. And I've always had vivid dreams and nightmares ever since I was a kid. So I was like, whatever, if this is going to help me, I don't care. But I will say it was like the worst nightmare of my life. And so I brought myself back down to 0.5 milligrams, and I've been on that for the last year, and I've been happy with that. And I only experience the shaking if I'm really exhausted, or I've traveled and I'm in like a new environment trying to go to sleep. So this does concern me a bit when it comes to like being a new parent and being sleep deprived. I do have kind of a fear around this like shaking coming back, but I'm going to try to not overthink that too much and just remind myself that it's the long COVID and that it's just a thing. But anyway, low-dose naltrexone may be something that you want to talk to your provider about. If they are not familiar with it, because it's still kind of new to the market, as it were, ask around, because there will be someone who is familiar with it. The science coming out around it is incredible, and I think it could be worth pursuing. You know, we did all this IVF testing earlier this year, and I did really like our doctor a lot, but he kind of tossed off, you know, the idea of low-dose naltrexone because it is a narcotic, and his concern was like, oh, it's a narcotic, so we don't know like the effects, even though it's really low dose. So I'd rather you not be on it. But he also admitted that he wasn't very familiar with working with it. When I asked him, like, have you ever worked with anyone who's been on it? And he said no. He also wasn't familiar at all with myo-inositol and the benefits of myo-inositol. So, you know, you're going to see somebody like an IVF specialist, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with. And any of this stuff can also benefit you if you decide you want to go down the IVF path as well. I think it can only help. That might be a strong statement to make, but I think it can help with getting you potentially like better egg quality. So maybe you harvest more eggs than you would without doing it. Maybe you're able to get some healthier embryos because of that. Who knows? Again, like all of this stuff is really trial and error, and you kind of have to see what works for you. But I really appreciate finding practitioners who are open to learning about new practices and willing to try new things and aren't just stuck in like their exact field of expertise. Like, I appreciate when people are like, oh, maybe this is something that I could add to my expertise that I currently have. And I just found that difficult in the IVF community with the few doctors that we worked with. And by the way, this is a natural pregnancy. We ended up not pursuing IVF because it was going to be like $23,000 for one round of it. Insurance covered 0% of it. And we've just been at this for so long that we were like, honestly, we're more excited about like getting a new kitchen than, putting this much money towards something that may not even work out, that has like a 33% success rate, which, by the way, traditional Chinese medicine options have like a 55% success rate. Again, this is per like studies I have found online. I'm not a professional researcher, but I will tell you what, I have spent a lot of time looking into this shit. So that has just been my experience. The other part of this long COVID diagnosis, which can also potentially have benefits to fertility, is hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So when Matt and I were living in the Netherlands for 3 months last winter, it was way more affordable to do hyperbaric oxygen therapy over there. And again, it's supposed to help with long COVID symptoms because it helps oxygenate your blood more. It helps with like blood flow, which again is supposed to help with inflammation. I found personally that helped a lot with the long COVID stuff. I wanted to continue doing it here, but it was about 3 to 4 times the price per session in Los Angeles. So I just couldn't continue to do it. And it's a very specific machine that most people are not going to be able to just like have in their home. So I had to stop doing that, but I did do it. I want to say like every 10 days to bi-weekly for like 2 months or so. So that is something else to look into. Okay. We've covered a lot. If you're still here listening to all of this, I hope you're not overwhelmed. I just wanted to share all of the things that I have discovered in over the course really of these last almost 5 years, but specifically between my last pregnancy, which was like December of 22, to now at 20 weeks pregnant in November of 24. I've again had the privilege and access to work with a lot of practitioners who have taught me a lot and helped me get to the bottom of some really important issues. Unfortunately, we went into a lot of medical debt because of this, because our previous insurance company had some like bad practices happening and they weren't paying providers, which meant that that load fell on us. We've only recently just paid that off because we sold our house. So be prepared to spend some kind of coin with like this testing and all this stuff. Hopefully your insurance is more on top of it than our previous insurance was. And I really hope that you don't have the same financial hardship that we had in going through this whole process. And it's tough because, like fertility doesn't wait. We're all only getting older. And, science will tell you your egg quality is getting shittier and shittier. There's less of them. And so you feel this pressure, like you have to act as quickly as possible. And so I think like finding whatever feels applicable to you, whatever feels like you can take on, do that. Don't feel like you have to implement like all these changes at the same time. Again, for me, like I know I just listed off a bunch of stuff, but this was like a gradual layering of processes. It's like, oh, let me learn about this thing. Okay, I'll try that. And then once I got used to doing that, it was like, okay, there's this other new thing that I'm willing to try. I'll throw that in the mix as well. So see what works for you. And also if there's any like unsolicited advice I can offer to anyone going through this, remember to play. Like have a good time. And that doesn't mean you have to spend all this money on travel. Like I'm so grateful we were able to leave the country and I was able to like fully reset. But I think the thing that was like really healing for me, which might sound really stupid, was just like riding my bike around the Netherlands. And you don't have to go to the Netherlands to ride a bike, but there's something like somatic about that repetitive movement, and also just playful about like, when's the last time you went out for a bike ride? Unless you're an active cyclist, like probably not that recently. Doing something that you did when you were a kid, I think just like having more play in our lives as adults can be really helpful for just improving your mental health, reminding yourself that like not everything has to be so serious, and just like regulating your nervous system. It's like there's so much shit happening in the world. There has been, there always will be, but like right now it feels insane. And I think doing whatever you can to bring you joy, either on your own or shared with people you care about, like your partner, especially if you're going through this with a partner, like the two of you having fun together is huge. Also finding support. If therapy is something you're interested in, we found like specific therapists that were well versed in working with people with PTSD, with pre-postnatal concerns. And we really zoned in on finding somebody who could work on the stuff like we specifically wanted to focus on. And that has been a game changer, both for me doing therapy on my own and us doing it together too, which has been amazing. So yeah, so I hope that this is helpful. And if anyone has any questions about anything, please feel free to DM me on Instagram, TikTok, shoot me an email via my website. I'm happy to share practitioners' names and contact info. Happy to share like the specific supplements I was actually on. I may just link to all those things in the show notes too, so you can just like check them out for yourselves. But yeah, and also, all of this to say, if you get to a point in this journey where you feel like you are just done, that's okay too. That is so okay. And I would say I was about 95% there before I got pregnant. I felt like mentally I was in a place to try one more time. I knew I wasn't really emotionally, physically capable of doing the IVF process. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try this one more time. And you know what? If it doesn't work out, I'm choosing to move on, because I've spent the back half of my 30s dealing with this, and I really don't want to take it into this next decade of my life. I'm turning 40 this year, and I just want to step into this next chapter unburdened by fertility. And I had been slowly inching my way towards making peace with that. Which is really hard to, after you've like worked so hard to try to, bring this dream to fruition. And I feel so grateful that like we're having this opportunity. There honestly were so many points where I was like, this is fucking never going to happen. I'm such an idiot for trying so hard. Like clearly it's not going to happen. And all that to say too is that your faith doesn't have to be perfect in order for you to see results, because there are so many times where I was like, I'm crazy for doing this. Like, I don't know why I'm expecting to have like a different result, but for whatever reason, maybe it was all of these things. Maybe it was like that juju component of fertility too, that like you just have no control over. Whatever, this was the time. And I'm just grateful for being able to have this experience and like get this far. I still am in shock every day when I see myself in the mirror and I'm like, what's that? Like that's crazy. And yeah, but you ultimately have the freedom to decide what you want to do. If you decide that you're done, you are done. And you know what? Fucking celebrate like that you had it in you to commit to trying. Like so many people don't try things because they're afraid. And I think to be afraid of something and go after it anyway is so fucking brave and really to be commended, and is a rare thing to find in people. But if you are trying to continue down this road, these are some tools that I found helpful. I hope they help you. Sending you all of the baby juju, good vibes. And again, if anyone wants to talk anymore, please reach out to me. I'm so happy to talk about this stuff. And stay tuned for future episodes of First Time for Everything. One step at a time. Ain't nothing wrong with trying to get it right. Step to it and hold on tight. Don't matter if it takes all day.
myself, I can't wait, so get